My light is awful today. I don't know what's happening. Okay. Hello, everyone. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Good night. Once again, my name is Miranda Fergus, and I am a teacher in the Barbadian primary school system. I have been teaching for about 20 years. I have worked at around 6 schools: St. Philip, St. James, now St. Michael, and now I am in Christ Church. My school that I'm currently assigned to is in Christ Church. And I'm here today to give you support on how to help your child build their comprehension skills. Now, comprehension is a core component of literacy instruction. Comprehension not only sorry is shown when we do the test, and that traditionally when we think of comprehension we think of reading a passage and answering some questions. But comprehension is so much more than that. Basically, comprehension is being able to understand any text that you have read, and really and truly, comprehension is integrated in the definition of reading. I met one student in my lifetime. Hi, good night, Kanisha. The eyes are more squinty than before. As I was saying, I met one student in my lifetime that say the words in the passage that he read really clearly, but if you were to ask him a question based on that passage, he was not able to answer. And in my opinion, he was not reading, because a big part of reading is being able to understand what you have read in the text, and some that understanding is shown by being able to retell or summarize the information that you have given. Now, I say summarize when we get to the CXC stage. We have to, I think, we used to have to write a summary. I haven't worked with anyone at the CXC level in a little while, so I don't know if that's still part of the CXC English language examination. I think it's English A. But when we think about our daily lives, we use comprehension in everything we do: to read a recipe, to understand how to put up maybe a piece of furniture, to be able to follow instructions, to find a location. So we need comprehension in everything that we do. So comprehension is a really, really big component of literacy and life, because literacy is the rudder that drives our lives. So I'm going to jump straight into some strategies some tips. Sorry, let me be careful. Some tips that you can use to help improve your child's comprehension skills. I'm just gonna, as I said, as usual, I'm just gonna glance at my notes that I prepared. So when we think of the traditional comprehension, the explicit instruction. So explicit instruction is when I specifically teach you a skill. When we think about it in mathematics, like when we're adding something and there's a particular method to do it, that's explicit instruction. You take these steps. So when we think about comprehension, we think about the question words. And these question words are who, what, when, where, why, how, and which. Did I say when? I think I said when. So if we can get children to understand the significance of the question words, so when we are in reception, which is our 4 to 5, from nursery, how we are exposing them to those question words orally. So when we think about comprehension, there's listening comprehension, again, there's speaking comprehension, and there's reading comprehension. Okay? So we focus a lot on listening comprehension, especially in those nursery and reception age groups, are the 3 to 4 and the 4 to 5 year groups. And we do that by, in schools, we do picture. Hi, good night, Christine. Welcome again. We do that by what we call picture composition. So we would, and you can do that at home if you see, if you pull up a photo of something, or you go somewhere, you ask specific questions about what the child is seeing. So what you're going to do is use those question words in your questioning. So what a lot of people default to is what? What do you see? And somebody might say, I see a cat, I see a rat. So try to think actively of a who question, a when question, a where question, and so on. It will take some practice, but take your time and do it. So you do that in your speaking and they're listening to those words. So they're being exposed to those words at a very early age. So when you are when you are engaging with them, use questions and using questions and asking them to answer the specific questions. They will start to develop knowledge, or just they're engaging, they're being immersed in the language. So if they're immersed in the language, when it comes time for them to be able to see the question word, it will be something that they have done through listening comprehension already, and they've heard those words several times. So we don't want that when a child gets to the infant A stage, and at the infant A stage, typically you are now going to be reading a passage and answering a sentence. This is the one that we think of when we hear of comprehension, where you are writing an answer based on a passage that you have read. We don't want that they're no seeing that they're no experiencing or engaging with the word who. We want them that they have heard it several times before, and you can do that through discussion. So when we talk about explicit instruction now, what I like to do is persons that teach English as a second language, they actually focus on what each question word requires for an answer. So for example, a who question, typically the answer is a person. A when question, typically the answer is a time. Where question, the answer is a location. How question, the answer is a process or steps. A which question, typically the answer is a choice. A what question, that one I would say that one is more fluid. So a what question it depends on what else is in the question statement. And I think I covered all. I covered who, what, why. Why is a reason. So with why, your answer usually gives me, I usually use because in the answer. So if children can begin to understand that when they see a who question, so here's a tip for struggling readers. So if you have an older child and you find that they are having some problems with answering comprehension questions correctly, using the method of teaching the children what each question tends to ask for. So I said tends to ask for because something in the way the question is worded might give you might require a different answer. But if you have a child that, like, for example, takes long to read a passage, this is a tip now. This is an early tip. What you can do, this is an early strategy that you can teach children to use. You can teach them to read the passage once, then read the questions, then read the passage again, and this time you're thinking of the questions that you have just read. If they have a pencil or a highlighter, they might even write down what is the who, this is a what. If it takes practice to do it, or they might underline, okay, well, this is a possible answer, this is a possible answer. So that when they come to actually writing the answers, they have already made a kind of a plan, or they've already identified possible answers in the passage. This is for older children who you find that if they're doing a comprehension passage, like in the Barbados Secondary School's entrance examination, which according to our ministry is phasing out. However, at CXC you have comprehension questions as well. When they get to secondary school, they have comprehension questions to complete. So therefore, that doesn't mean that this strategy can't support and help children. It can work no matter what. So read the questions. This is a strategy for completing a comprehension passage. They can read the passage once, read the questions, and then read the passage again. And this time, when they're reading the passage the second time, they're thinking about the questions that they just read. If it's a child that really takes really long to read, I would say read the questions first and then read the passage once. And when you're going through the passage, if you can, highlight or put a little tick by this is a possible answer, this is a possible answer, this is a possible answer. It helps children to be able to complete the passage correctly on time. So that's a little strategy for the final part of what we traditionally think of as comprehension, which is reading a passage and answering questions. So, question words. If you know what each question word requires, then it helps when you are doing those passages. It helps when you are trying to develop your critical thinking skills. And it generally helps because you're understanding the concept of those question words. So that's one tip that you can start to work on. So there are actually some charts and different activities, but sometimes I just do it in a rhythm. I'm going to share a poem with you that I wrote for some students. One of the poems that I wrote for the word who. So it is, as I said, I wrote it and it goes, who. Is there an owl in my classroom? What should I do? Who is an important question word. When we ask a question with it, a certain answer must be heard. If who is the question that we are asking, then for certain, the answer we are looking for should be a person. So that poem I use with my infant year students, and we repeat the poem during our poetry time. But then we examine the content of the poem, and we realize that when we answer the word who, when we see the word who in our as one of our questions, the answer you're looking for must be a person. Okay, so one tip that you can do, and you can focus on one question word a week. If you find that there's a particular one that they don't get, so you're going to ask a flood of questions based on that question word, so they start to understand that who, you're looking for a person, where is a place, when is a time, which is a choice, why is a reason, so you have to usually use the word because, what is more flexible, so I would leave what for the final question word, because what really depends on what else you're doing, but what can be multiple things. Question words and question word phrases are different. So now in mathematics now you have how many, so that's a phrase that's a little different. But if you focus on those core questions, and how is the process? If you focus on those, hi again, it says here, if you focus on those question words and they start to understand what they mean, they need to be able to learn to spell them. So what you can do is use your bingo frame or some of the activities I shared in the previous live or on the Facebook live sessions, and let them be able to learn the words, to recognize them, and as well as to spell them. Okay, so that's one, question words. Another one, and I put these resources to match this second strategy, book reports. Now, comprehension, as I said, is being able to understand what you have read. Point and simple. There are different types of literacies. So, for example, I am developing my comprehension skills in being able to use the YouTube Live interface to be able to put resources on my channel. I am still working on being able to put information in the description box. So I'm developing those skills. So there's technological literacy, digital literacy, there's visual literacy, where you're able to understand certain graphics and so on. So your graphic artist will be able to tell you why certain things are working and why certain things are not working. So because they're different literacies, there are different comprehensions in those, but at the core of it is reading comprehension. And that's why you are here. So what we can do is do book reports. So my first exposure to book reports was when I was in first form at my secondary school up and on. And we had to write book reports based on books that we read like weekly. And I would admit that once or twice, I just read a synopsis at the back of the book and tried to see it or put that in my own words. Although I was an avid reader, and the teacher, of course, knew that I did not actually read a book, because Reading the book indicates that you being able to do a book report is like the early stage of doing a summary. So being able to do a book report is understanding what you have read and taking it and putting that information down. Now I have put 7 graphic organizers. So a graphic organizer, for those that are maybe non-teacher, a graphic organizer is a visual way that you can plan something. So a graphic organizer. Where's my whiteboard? Where's my whiteboard? I see it. I see my whiteboard. A graphic organizer is a way for you to be able to. No, I don't know where my cleaner is. To be able to plan something, and those are going to become a factor in tomorrow. I'm going to show you some graphic organizers for sure in tomorrow's session on composition writing. Okay, so a graphic organizer for writing a book report. I put 7 samples in the parent classroom for you, different formats. So in a graphic organizer, what you want is that you want, when the child reads a story, and this will be for a fiction story, you want them to be able to identify the characters in the story, identify the setting in the story or where the story takes place, identify the events in the story. So if I'm gonna go through an example from a classic fairy tale, the one that I like to do it with, because to me it's very easy to identify the events. So most classic fairy tales are like that. But the 3 Billy Goats Gruff. Now I find the 3 Billy Goats Gruff is one of those classic fairy tales that are kind of like phasing out of our libraries. We don't see them as much. However, the 3 Billy Goats Gruff. That is a little bit of an alliteration, not a complete one, but an alliteration is a way that you can build letter knowledge, being able to say a sentence that begin with the same letter. So being able to say that quickly also helps improves children's skills. So that was giving me a little twisted tongue. The 3 Billy Goats Gruff. It has distinct characters, the 3 Billy Goats, the different aged Billy Goats, and the troll. The location in the meadow, and in the meadow there's the bridge where they cross over the 2 meadows. Okay? Then the events, one goat, first goat goes over, in some butts the troll eats him, in some butts have been adjusted. Can't remember what happened to them, but the traditional but I know what the troll eats them. Does he eat them? No. I think I'm forgetting that story. The Big Goats Gruff, I can't remember what happens to the first one. Then oh no, I remember now. The first one sells out his brother. Yeah. They pass on the responsibility to the bigger brother, where they say, "Oh, eat my brother." I remember that one. Okay, yes, that's it. Right? So each one is a particular event that you can identify. So there 1, 2, 3, there are about 4 events. Something happens in the beginning, something happens in the middle, something happens at the end, which where the big Billy Goat with his beautiful horns but to troll away. So if you one of a book report for a younger child, you would help them to be able to identify what happens in the story, who are the characters in the story. The character in the story is the animal or person that does something or something happens to in the story. For all the children, first, second form, class 3, class 4, what you'll be focusing on now is the conflict, even class 2, the conflict in a story and the resolution. So what you're doing at each level is that you are doing a book report, but you're doing it requiring more at each level. So one of the book report templates that I put in, it simply focuses on, hi Michael, it simply focuses on the characters in the story and where the story happens, and that's fine. You can go to that template, you can create a template on your own, you can go online and look for book report templates. There's a plethora of book report templates. But the point of it is that after you've read the book, so suppose you do a read aloud, which we're going to talk about next. Suppose you do a read aloud, read the book to your child, and this is for the younger children. The next day, or if it's a bedtime, which I wouldn't recommend it, doing this with a bedtime story. There are different reasons for reading and different reasons for listening. So they're listening to be able to create a report. So a book report for a child might be in a drawing book, and you might have the word characters. And on a separate piece of paper or in the book, you might ask them to, you might cut a small piece of paper and ask them to draw the troll, draw the goats, and then under the word characters, you stick each piece of paper. And I wouldn't, with a small child, I wouldn't use the word setting right away, although Jerome Bruner says you can use the language, it is how you do it. You break it down into the icons, which is what I'm doing. So you can start by saying where the story took place. Then you can phase into saying the setting or the location. And we can use location. You know what we can use location easily? Because now when our children are with us, we use the Google location. So that word is a part of their vocabulary. It is a norm of their vocabulary for younger children. They would hear, especially if you use the Google map and the Google location, that is something that they would hear often. So it would not be something that would be foreign to them. And if it is, you then use it as a word of the day prior to this. So you can do a word of location. That's the word of today. And hi, good night, Shaniqua. And then we can use the word location. So if they do the location, again, they're going to draw a picture of the bridge and the meadows. So what you're doing here is a type of book report for young children, but what you are starting to get them to understand is the parts of a story. Whilst you're doing that now, you are asking them the questions. And remember, you consciously are thinking of very real questions. Who are the characters? And this will be after you've talked to them about, and sorry, we don't have to talk about the word characters. The children, and it's Roblox. The children do use the word, again, because of video games, because of YouTube. The word character is a part of their vocabulary. So then you are going to transfer that knowledge into that books have characters too. Okay? So I'm sorry, I wasn't thinking about, or for a moment there, I wasn't thinking about our generation. I think they're the Generation Z. I think so. I could be wrong. Okay? So you're going to tell them about the which character. You can ask them about which character, because it's which character went over the bridge first. Where did the troll live? So you're asking, you're thinking consciously of using as many different questions as possible. You're exposing them to the listening comprehension and understanding what those question words mean, but during your engagement. Good. So we're teaching what the question words usually mean. We're actually going to use book reports, and in the family support classroom, and remember, if you have not joined the family support classroom as yet, or you were not in any of the previous lives, hi Uniquely, because I can't call that first name that you have. Yes, and I don't want to call it incorrectly. What I was saying, I strayed a little bit just now. Question words, book reports, right? And I put like 7 different samples of book report templates. You can feel free to go into the classroom space, download them. You can use one, you can use more than one. Some of them I'm gonna look. There's one that is a chapter summary one. I don't think I put that in. So if you are reading a chapter book, or if the child is reading a chapter book, they can do a chapter report. I find that useful for children, especially if they're now starting out, rather than trying to do the entire book report. So what you can do is choose a specific book that children that they are reading to do a book report for. You should also do another book where you do read aloud. And reading aloud is my other comprehension, my other suggestion for you to help build your child's comprehension skills. So as I told you before, reading aloud, sorry, reading is comprehension or comprehension is reading. That's basically it. Okay. So why is it important for you to read aloud? And this is for any primary age child, and I'm not against doing it for a secondary child as well. And this is whether the child is a great reader or not. When you read aloud for a child, you do several things. You model the correct, or you should be modeling the correct cadence, tone, and use of verbal spacing for actual reading. So you're actually being a model for them in how you read books. When you read aloud, you should always choose, not always, sorry, don't let me say always. Try to choose a book that is above their level. So if they are reading at a level where they're like two letter words or two worded sentences, read a book that's above their level. So what you're doing that way is you're exposing them to vocabulary, you're exposing them to more advanced vocabulary. So that is why one of the reasons why reading aloud is very, very important. So reading aloud and comprehension. When you do the read aloud, what you can do is engage the child in discussion, not necessarily ask them questions based on what you have done. That's another way. But engage the child in discussion on their thoughts. What if it were you? If you was the second Billy Goat, what would you have done? If you were in that position, if you were the third Billy Goat, do you think you would have been angry with your brothers that they left it up to you to deal with it? What about if you were the troll? Why do you think the troll felt that way? And try to get them to see other perspectives, try to get them to think how specific characters were be thinking, even to a certain extent the villain in the story, ask them, introduce them to the language of the villain versus the hero. A movie that I love, of course, is it Disney? I can't remember if it's Disney or Pixar, but a movie that I love that really explores the villain and how a villain is made is a cartoon called Megamind. So even if you watch a movie with your child, so Frozen for girls, not for girls, but Frozen, the themes in Frozen about sisterhood. If you were Anna, I think Anna is the one. Elsa's the one with the powers. If you were Anna, what would you do? When would you be angry with Elsa that she made you that ill? What do you think of? It was Hans. Hans was the villain. I think he was, and with your sis, if they have a sibling, which one do you think you would be? So you notice that I'm trying as much as possible to use the varied question words. So what we're doing is that we're exposing them in our listening and speaking comprehension. So it's not separated. So as I said, read aloud. Ask them. So another thing now with the question words, ask them to ask questions. Encourage them to generate questions. An activity that you can do that might be, it's not a book report. Write a letter to the author of the book for older children or even younger children. Write a letter to a particular character in the book, asking them questions. So the children your child will have to come up with the questions that they will want to ask the child. So that is kind of not exactly a book report, but an extension of something that you can do when you finish doing the reading aloud, or if they've read a book where you really get into the characters. So this would really this would really be powerful as well for children if you read chapter books. Okay? So those were three. Another thing that you can do to help and that this is also connected, is to help children to recognize story structure. So every story, whether it be fiction or nonfiction, has a beginning, a middle, and an end. So when we're writing the book reports, some book reports formats look at the events in the story. If they're having problems with that, you can go about, and I also put a template in the classroom for this. And it's simple. Every story has a beginning, a middle, and an end. And it is very, very, the classic fairy tales are good tools to use to show the beginning of the story, the middle of the story, and the end of the story. So you can go over, and as I said, even if it's if your child is older, class 3 or class 4, that doesn't mean that they can't sit down and write out the beginning of the story, the middle of the story, and the end of the story. They're not focusing on in this how simple the story is, but identifying the parts of the story, the structure of the story. So this will also support their composition rating. One, and I'm going to speak about that tomorrow. One of the ways that support composition rating is developing an understanding of pieces that have already been written. And you can do that during your comprehension activities. Okay? So recognizing the story structure. Now I want to start to bring it together. And there's the fifth thing that I'm going to speak about is an actual strategy is an actual comprehension strategy. So earlier I gave you a quick strategy, and that was for actually approaching how to do a comprehension passage. That's the end point, which is read the questions first, and then the passage. And when you're reading the passage, you're thinking about the questions and the possible answers. A more specific strategy is called the QAR strategy. So the QAR strategy is basically the question answer relationship strategy. And it is not far removed from what I was telling you earlier. So these tips kind of come together in a basket. So if you start by looking at the question words and what each question word requires, then you can move along to the QAR strategy. So what I have done and put in that family support classroom for you are 2 posters. So these 2 posters you can print and put in your child's, if there's a space for you to put them, or you can have a folder for them that they can be able to look at that. So the relationship between the question and the answer is what you will work with the child to understand. So the relationship might be there 4 areas that the child can look at. Is it a right? So we're looking at what the passage and what type of question it is. So is it a right there question? The right there question is what people might call the fact question. Does this question ask me something that is right there in the passage? So, like for example, when questions would tend to be right there questions, because when questions might ask you what day something happened or what time something happened, and that would tend to be right there in the passage. Now, I say tend to be because it is not set in stone. What this strategy is something that will come over time and with practice for children to be able to recognize the cues and the phrasings for the different types of questions and the answers that relate to those type of questions. So one is the right there. Is it right there in the passage? I don't have to think about it. It's straight ahead of me. The information is there. Or is it a think and search? Do I have to think about what the question is answering? And do I have to look back through the passage to understand what the answer is? Is it a think and search question? And as I said, this strategy is something that you will have to do a little bit more research if you wish. And I'm going to put some more resources in the classroom because, as I said, this is something that comes over time. This is not a instant fix. But if the children understand this strategy, what can happen is that you know, the earlier strategy that I told you about, or reading the questions, they might be able to instantly pick up that's a right there question, that's a think and search question. So what it does is that it engages and makes the process, which is the end game of reading the passage and answering the questions, more powerful. Okay, so this strategy is a strategy for approaching a completing an actual comprehension passage. All right. So then there's the author and you. So this is the one that would be an opinion. Okay. The think and search might be a reason. Why did this happen? This happened because. Okay. The author and you is something where you have to give your opinion. So the author and you, in the getting each other to understand an author and you question, is one where you kind of have to bring part of your opinion, but it's not your opinion just randomly. You still have to look at what the author said in the passage. So you had the right there question. So imagine your child understands you have used this strategy. They have the grasp of this strategy. They might not be reading too fast, but they understand the strategy and they can recognize the question types. So when they're able to recognize the question types and they combine that first strategy that I told you about, and they read the questions first, they are identify this is this type of question, this is that type of question. So when they read the passage now, they are they're really making use of their time, and they are really able to get the passage understood, I guess, better. So this is a strategy for them. The other thing is on your own. So a classic on your own. Now, on your own does not mean you completely forget the passage. It still has to connect to the passage. But a classic on your own is when there's always questions. Give the story a suitable title. So that is a higher order. When I say a higher order, there are different questions. So there are questions that are very basic. So 101 in mathematics is a basic question for infants HL. When we get to where the problems now, that's a higher order requirement. Same thing in comprehension. Being able to give a story a suitable title is usually a higher order question. So therefore, that one, if I look at that like that's on your own, that's saying I have to figure out on my own. I have to use the information and come up with that idea on my own. So imagine a child that has gone through, and I'm going to wrap up very soon. I imagine a child that uses those strategies instead of them being frustrated in going through the passage and then having to think about the questions. They already read the questions. They already identified the type of questions they are. So when they start to read the passage now, it is with more meaning. It's like, okay, I know where I'm going. I know the path, and I am going to go through this passage looking for specific things because I know the strategy that I am using. So you teach them that it's a strategy. You teach them that is a strategy for approaching comprehension passages, and you actually teach the strategy. So like I said, I put a poster into the family support classroom, and I'm going to look for some other resources for anyone that is interested and working with their child in using this strategy in completing comprehension passages. Now, as I said, I would have mentioned more in each live. I'm working on finding a location to actually have physical workshops where we can actually create resources for all of these different areas that we are doing, that you can actually go home. I've been using the word actually a lot, actually. That was a purpose though. That you can take home a kit that specifically helps your child to develop on their reading journey. And this is why you're on their team and I'm on yours. So if there are not any questions today, as I said, I am growing, so I'm keeping this time as tight. By tomorrow, I'm gonna shave off this 10 here, and we're gonna keep it at that 30. Although it's composition rating, which is a big one, but I am gonna work at keeping it there. It's a journey, just that you are supporting your child on their reading journey. I want to thank you for supporting me on my YouTuber journey as I provide, I think, useful tips and strategies. I want to give thanks to all those persons that have emailed me and let me know that the information is very useful for them. And I am going to continue to research and look for information that can help you. So once again, thank you. I don't see any questions in the box. So if there are no questions, I'm just going to go over quickly the 5 tips that I gave you. Remember, help your child to understand what each question word requires. So to do that, they have to learn what the question words are, and then typically what each question word requires. If you want to teach them my poem, that would be great. It would actually be really, really cool if you were to send videos to the Facebook page of a child saying the poem. This who? That was the name of the poem. It's my poem, so I should know, right? So teach them the question words. Teach them what the question words want from you. Use book reports. Okay? Book reports are very, very good. They're powerful tools. Read aloud to your child, and when you're reading aloud to your child, engage them in discussion. Star Trek, engage. Reading journey, engage. Engage them in discussion. Ask them to generate questions. Help them to recognize the structure of a story, and feel free to use the story map that I have placed in the family support classroom. And then you can use strategies like the Qar strategy. And in the Qar strategy, there's a poster in the classroom again, but you help children to understand that there are different types of questions, including write there questions, think and search questions, author and you questions, or on your own questions. So I was reviewing and giving the chance that if anyone wanted to ask any questions. I don't see any questions. So I'm going to say good night to you. Stay safe, stay blessed, continue supporting your children on their reading journey. And remember, you can follow Young Stampy Productions on Facebook. You can subscribe to this channel so that, because after this week, I'm still going to continue putting resources, and then I might most likely do another round of workshops. And subscribe to the YouTube, Facebook, or you can send an email at youngstampyproductions@gmail.com and stay tuned to those spaces because some other resources will be coming on their way. So I'm going to say good night now. Bye-bye.